Welcome to today's Torah in the Courts of Heaven. Today's Torah portion is Vayishlach, and it means, and he sent. And I believe what the Lord would say to you, as well as me, is even in the struggle, in fact, because of your struggle, I am making your life like me. You know, the Lord said he is the author and finisher of our faith. And if we have his faith, if we're born again, he will complete the job he has begun in us. And all that we see going on in the world today is simply him taking the sandpaper to our life and smoothing us out and getting us ready and getting us prepared for his glory to come. We are actually invited into the courts of heaven even now as his sons and daughters. It says in Psalm 65:4, "Blessed is the man whom you choose and cause to approach you." And that word approach is the word 7125 in the Hebrew Strong's Concordance. And the word is karab, which means to invite. So it's not just a matter of God choosing some people. He's inviting everyone. Everyone has the invitation to come into his courts. But will they do it? Will you do it? Will you be willing to come into his courts? It says that you may dwell in his courts. We shall be satisfied with the goodness of your house, even your holy temple. So it's important that we take the time with this invitation and we enter into the courts of God. You know, you can't do it when you're doing something else. You know, if you're busy, you won't be able to enter into the courts of God. You have to take the time for God. He surely has taken the time for us. But it's a struggle, and we struggle with God. We struggle all the time. And as a matter of fact, that's what we talked about before in an earlier Torah portion, how that when Jacob's name was changed to Israel, it was because he struggled with God. And that's what Israel means, a struggle with God. And not like so much as you think of the wrestling match that was going on in the Bible, but this fact of here, you know, is this really God saying this to me? Am I really understanding what he's telling me to do? And that's the struggle. And we should be always in that struggle of trying to find the center of the path that God has for us. And when we're not, then we could be in danger because we could be going away from God's will. You know, the day will come when the struggle will be over. You know, you will have to struggle anymore what God's will is because you will be with him. You will physically be with God. Now, he is physically here with us now. Don't misunderstand. But we don't see him. And sometimes we don't feel him. But so we struggle. We struggle to find the center of what he asked for us. In Genesis 32, in verse 26, he said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And so he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob," as just what I have just said. And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and prevailed." And you know, as believers, as followers of Yeshua, you have been grafted into the vine, to the tree, to the branch of who Yeshua is. And so, in essence, you are part of Israel. So you could say your name is Israel in a sense, because you are a one who now struggles with God. You know, people who don't believe in God or don't choose to follow God or don't are outside of God, they don't struggle with God. They, you know, a lot of times you might even wonder. You know, it says that even in the Psalms that it seems like the unbeliever and the wicked just live a happy life. They just go about their merry way, and a lot of times that's really true because there's no struggle with God in them. But it won't be their end. You see, their end will be horrible. Their end will be tragic. Their end will be terrible because they have no knowledge and no relationship with God. And so when you have this relationship, and then you've caused friction. And it's just the same as every human relationship, every husband, wife, every brother, sister, every mother, father. aunt, uncle, cousin, every relationship is going to have possibilities for friction, because we're in this life and we struggle, but that will not always be the case. Genesis 35:17 says, "Now it came to pass, when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said to her, 'Do not fear, you will have this son also.' And so it was, as her soul was departing for her, because she died, that she called his name Ben-Oni. But his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar on her grave, which is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. Then Israel journeyed and pitched his tent beyond the tower of Eder." Now, this is very significant for us as believers, for us who follow Yeshua, because this is the place where Rachel died. In essence, is giving us a foreshadowing of where Yeshua would be born. Her grave would be near the place where Yeshua was born. And many, I don't think, figured this out. But see, so what's happening here is we're getting this prophetic picture, because when she died, but yet she's given life. And the life is Benjamin, because you see, she gave him the name Ben-Oni, but he actually would end up with the name Benjamin, which means son of the right hand of God. So who is the son of the right hand of God? Yeshua. So the fact that this man Benjamin, this last son of Israel, this last tribe, the young tribe, would be the picture of where Yeshua would be born. Plus the fact that it's in, you see, the place of the Tower of Eder. And we know in Micah chapter 5, it speaks of the Tower of the Flock, which is Migdal Eder. That's what you get in English, is Tower of the Flock. And it's the place, the Tower of the Flock, is the place where the temple lambs were raised. So as you see, the shepherds that you hear about that were in their fields when they saw the star, and then you know the whole nativity story. Well, these just weren't any shepherds. These were shepherds that were watching over the flocks of the temple, that these lambs would be used for the sacrifice at the temple. And don't you find it interesting that Yeshua, Jesus, would be born as the Lamb of God in the place where lambs that would be sacrificed would be born? It's the total picture of that. And yet, it's also part of Bethlehem, because you could say Migdal Eder is kind of a suburb of Bethlehem. I don't know where you live, but for example, I live here in Paragould, Arkansas, and yet in this small town, there's different little areas and subdivisions right here in this little town. And so it's that way pretty much in every little town, unless it's a little tiny town. But even there, they're going to say, down by the rock, which is called the Hollow Rock or whatever. So it's the same in this case. Bethlehem was the city, which was a small city, even then, still is to this day. And yet, Migdal Eder, or Tower of the Flock, was a section of Bethlehem. So when we say that he was born in Bethlehem, he was in a section of Bethlehem called Migdal Eder. And isn't it interesting that Bethlehem means house of bread? So here you have the bread of life, who Yeshua would identify himself as, one of the names, one of the aspects of his life, and he would be born in Migdal Eder, in the place where the temple lambs would be raised as the sacrifice, and actually the once and for all sacrifice for all sins, for all men, for all time. It's a wonderful thing. Now, we think about Benjamin's name also meaning the right arm or the right hand of God. So let's think about this. So the arm of the Lord. In the Bible, the arm of the Lord is a very powerful image of the saving power of God. But it's more than an image. In Isaiah 59:16 and 63:5, we are told how God will save his people by his own arm, which also amplifies the promise of the Messiah. As we are able to read many times of the arm of the Lord, we understand it leads us to the Son of God, who, as Hebrews 10:5 says, citing from Psalm 40, has received a body prepared from God. So Yeshua is God. He is God. He's not a lesser God. He is God. You know, he said many times, I and my Father are one. Now, it's not three gods. It's not the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit making three separate gods. You know, Yahweh himself said, I am one. He is Echad, one. And yet in this oneness, he has the Father, he has the Spirit, and he has the Son. He has a body. And people argue this, that's fine. But the point is, he says it himself. Yeshua said, if you know me, you know the Father. So let's go on with this continuation of the arm of the Lord, which is actually an anthropomorphic statement. Anthropomorphic means simply having a human form or human attributes ascribed to non-human things. And you can think about it like we say the head of a bed or the legs or arms of a chair. You know, you can think of many. You can make a game out of it, I suppose, where you think about all the different things that you can think have human characteristics, but they're not human at all. So is the arm of the Lord anthropomorphic. In one sense, yes, but in another sense, no, because I just said the Lord was given a body. He says, a body you prepared for him, which was from Psalm chapter 40. John 4:24 says, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. But we have the nativity of Yeshua. So here again, is he spirit or is he have a body? Well, he has both. It's both. And so much of the time we see when we study from a Hebraic perspective that it's not one or the other, it's many things as it is here. And most of the time we cannot fully understand it or fully explain it. That's where our faith has to come in. Now, going back to Benjamin, or Benjamin, how Hebrew would be called, was a foreshadow of the nativity of Yeshua, as I just spoke. And you can see it now, where Rebekah died. She had to give way. She had to give up her life to give this man-child Benjamin, which his name means the right hand of God. And this is the exact place where Yeshua would be born. Now, I mentioned to you in Migdal Eder, which it talks about. So let me talk to you a moment about Migdal Eder, just to kind of show you, as I said, this would be a suburb of Bethlehem, much like Center Hill would be a suburb of Paragould, where I live. It's still Paragould, but it's pinpointing the exact location, you see. It's like an address, in other words. So in Micah 4:8, and you, O tower, which is Migdal, of the flock, which is Eder. So Migdal Eder, you tower of the flock, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion. To you shall it come, even the former dominion shall come, the kingdom of the daughter of Jerusalem. And so we go to Micah 5:2. Now, first of all, before I go on from this verse 4:8, Micah 4:8, it's giving you the prophetic utterance here, that in this location, in Migdal Eder, that the kingdom, the leader of the kingdom, the dominion of the kingdom will come out of this place, will be born here, in other words, a king. In Micah 5:2, but you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be the ruler in Israel, whose goings forth are from old, from everlasting. Now, it's obviously speaking of a king. It says it, that it's coming a kingdom. But where does it come from? From old. And we're not talking about just ancient. We're talking from everlasting. So now it's a place where we can't go and we can't imagine, because it's everlasting. So Yeshua has always been. He's God. He has no beginning and no end. In verse 5:3, therefore he shall give them up until the time that she who is in labor has given birth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return to the children of Israel. And to continue, and he shall stand and feed his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they shall abide, for now he shall be to the ends of the earth. And this one shall be peace. And now this one that shall be peace, in verse 5, is the Shar Shalom, or we could say the Prince of Peace. And we know that is exactly who Yeshua is, the Prince of Peace. Now it's interesting, if you were standing in Migdal Eder, in the place, the Tower of the Flock, and I've had the wonderful blessing, and I'm very humbled by this, that I was being able to be in Migdal Eder on multiple times and stand in these shepherd fields that are still there. And the stone walls, it's basically two hills adjacent to one another. And they have terraced the fields from thousands of years ago, and they're still there. The walls are breaking down, but they're still there. And even many of the old towers, the towers of the flock, there's some of those towers are still there. Also, they're, in disrepair, obviously, for 2,000 years, but they're still there. Actually, they're older than 2,000 years because they were there before the birth of Christ. So, but in this, if you're standing there, in the background, you can see what's called Herodian. And it looks like a giant volcano. And actually it was built by King Herod. And the point is, Herod was, of course, very evil and wanted to kill the babies, all the male babies, because he had heard of a king that was coming. So in Psalm 23:4, it says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." So the point is, the shadow of this great mountain built by King Herod foreshadows into the Tower of the Flock. So Yeshua, you could say, was born in the shadow of death. And that's exactly why he came, to come and to take death for us, to take the penalty of death for us. We, of course, die, but really, if we know the Yeshua, we don't really die. We simply change form. We will leave this body, but we will gain a heavenly body. And yes, I truly believe this, and actually look forward to that day. Now, in another way, we not only think about the fact that Yeshua was where he was born at Bethlehem in Migdal Eder, but we think about the fact that he grew up in Nazareth. And what does that mean? Well, let's look at Matthew chapter 2 and verse 23. "And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene." Now, some people get the misunderstanding that he took a Nazarite vow. But just please understand that Nazarene and Nazareth have nothing to do with Nazarite, which is the Nazarite vow. They're not even the same word at all. They sound similar, but that's not what it is. It's simply the fact that Yeshua grew up in Nazareth. So he was really from Bethlehem because he was born in Bethlehem. But since he grew up in Nazareth, because you remember, they had to leave Bethlehem to go to Egypt to get away from the murderous Herod and then return as a young child to Nazareth. And most likely that's when the wise men actually saw him, when he was a young child in Nazareth. So he was there in Nazareth, and he became known as a Nazarene because that's what the Bible said would have to happen. Now it's interesting because the word Nazarene or Nazareth means from a branch, like a branch. And this is so interesting. In John 15, verse 5, it says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing." So you see, even his very name, the place where Yeshua came from, grew up, being Nazareth, amplifies the fact that we are his branches. He is the vine. We're connected to him just like a vine. And with everything that we see going on in this world, there's so much you can't even keep up with it. There's so many conspiracy theories. Probably many of them will come out to be true. Many won't. The thing is, if we're going to focus on those things that are coming on the earth, that's what we'll be focused on, when we should be and need to be focused on him, because now it is time for us to be his branches.